Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started now. My name is Dylan Kassane. I'm a member of the marketing team here at Inova Software. First of all, thank you for taking the time to attend our webinar today. I know, and we all know here, that for many of you, it's a very difficult time right now. So I hope that you and your families are making it through this pandemic period safely, and that everybody's doing well. Today's webinar is another one in our regular series of webinars that gather the biopharma community together to exchange and share on best practices. To give you an idea of who's joining us on the call today, we have a little bit more than 230 people registered, coming from all kinds of life science companies, from very small biotechs right through to top 10 pharma companies. And now on to today's topic, which is alliance management best practices, reducing risk, and driving successful partnerships. Our guests on today's webinar are two alliance management professionals from leading pharma firms. Philippe Lievre, the Global Head of Pharma and Alliance Management at Novartis, and Rob Barber, Senior Alliance Manager at Mundipharma. And they'll be joined by Inova's own Sebastien Buffier, Head of Customer Success Pharma. Now, before we dive in, just a few administrative logistics. Your microphone will be on mute during the presentation so that we can minimize all of the background noise. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat window, and we're going to come to those at the end of the presentation. Because after the presentations, we'll be opening up things for discussion, and of course, your questions. We are going to record the webinar. So if you have colleagues that couldn't attend today, or if you want to watch it again later and refresh your memory, we'll send you a link to that recording. Finally, at the end of the webinar, when you log out, you'll see a pop-up survey, which we hope that you'll be able to complete. It's very short, a few seconds or so. This will help make us feel more sure that we're providing you with the content that you need, and also a chance to let us know if you would like to participate in a future webinar for yourself or for your company. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Philippe. Philippe from Novartis. Philippe, take it away.
Thank you, Dylan. Can you hear me? You can hear me properly? Yeah?
Perfectly well.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be with you today, albeit virtually, but I guess this is the way we shall have to all meetings for a while. So my name is Philippe Lievre. I'm the Global Head of Pharma Alliance Management in Novartis. I'm based in Basel, and I have been with Novartis for almost 20 years. Today, let me walk you through a few slides demonstrating the value of alliance management concept and properly established alliance processes inside an organization. Slide 2, Dylan. I joined the BD&L Alliance Management Department in 2004 from Japan. And by 2019, the revenues originating from partnered products were already approaching 50%. Looking at this slide, you can see that the future revenues coming from in-licensed and partnered products will be even greater in the future. So it is clear that for our industry, and most likely for all industries, the inorganic growth drivers will become stronger and the importance of partnership evident. Slide number 3, Dylan. Now, if we look at slide number 3, we can see what the partners are looking for in terms of attributes when negotiating a deal. The value creation expertise is very important, but partners also seek core partnering skills to close a deal. Surveys also show that once the deal is closed, alliance management and cultural fit have an even greater importance during the post-deal interactions. Studies have shown that relationship and cultural mismatch leads to a high rate of failure. Slide number 4, Dylan. I will walk you through what I consider the 5 strategic best practices of alliance management. that is defining the strategic imperative, the benefits of having an alliance-centric organization, being a partner of choice, the value of early alliance management intervention, and finally, the value of post-closing alliance management. Next slide, then. For the alliance management concept to be really effective and meaningful, it needs to come from the top of the organization and be embraced by all levels of your organization. And the alliance mindset is most often seen in three areas, such as alliance language and public display. For example, having your CEO tell stories about alliances. The organization having partner-focused routines and organized processes. And one of them is the existence of direct access to the right people in the respective organizations. And the alliance values exemplified by proactive and candid communication with each other. Slide number 6. Slide number 6 shows why an organization needs a strong alliance management group with seasoned professionals. This is to support the deal-making process along its life cycle from the evaluation stage to the termination of a relationship, which can be 10, 15 years after the deal closure. To support the effort to become a leader in alliance management, your organization needs to move from the phenomenon of accidental alliance management to the integration of professional certified alliance management roles. Slide number 7. Now on slide 7, let's look at the three fundamental elements that will define your organization as the partner of choice. Culture. You will need a committed senior management and an organization that is curious, keen to listen about innovation, to be open to learn, adapt, and take smart risks where new ideas can produce better outcomes. Collaboration. To be ready to combine and complement your own skills with that of the partners, to collaborate with the partner in the development or commercialization of its asset, flexibly addressing both needs in the interest of bringing new medicines to patients. To be committed to trusting mutual successful partnerships. Capabilities. To bring to the table strong, multifaceted developmental and commercial capabilities across therapeutic areas and offer a footprint for market access. And finally, of course, invest in a strong alliance management team with a track record of success. Slide number 8, Dylan. This slide shows the value of early involvement of alliance management intervention. It helps identify cultural differences early. It maintains consistent understanding of goals and strategy. Input to an implementation of a governance structure. It helps define clear partner roles. It integrates best practices into all deal processes. And finally, identify any issues early to prevent later escalation. Slide number 9. This slide shows the value in post-closing alliance management. Manage kickoff meetings, perhaps with the support of a charter. Communicate clear strategic intent and governance. Honors contractual rights and obligations. Train teams on alliance effectiveness as do's and don't do. Develop common assumption about performance. And monitor the health of the alliance. Slide 10. I didn't want to leave this meeting without giving you what I consider one of the important tools of alliance management. It shows a charter that I see as a demanding but perhaps key tool to align between the internal teams and also with the partner. Such model should be flexible, but it should help you address key aspects of the collaboration in terms of expectations, etc. And be somehow of an icebreaker, establishing open communication at the beginning of the alliance and certainly preventing later surprises and misunderstanding. Slide 11, Dylan. That's a very busy slide. I won't go through it, but it highlights some parameters on which we need to focus and address the value of behavior rules that should prevail to build and preserve trust and collaborative spirit, particularly when under pressure. This closes my presentation. Thank you all for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe. I've noticed already a couple of questions have come in on the chat. We will get to them, but like I mentioned at the start, we'll get to them at the end of all of the presentations. So do keep adding them into the chat. We are going to get to them just in a little while. Right now, I'm going to hand over to Rob. Rob, take it away.
Thanks, Dylan. And I'm hopeful, again, that everybody can hear me. Pleased to be with you this afternoon. And if we can have the next slide, please. What I thought I would do is I would just introduce you to Mundipharma as a business. We are a privately owned global business ex-US, reaching about $1 million or $1 billion's worth of sales in Europe. We are, I say, privately owned and transformed in recent years from what was originally seen as a pain company into one that is much more broadly spread out in therapeutic areas. We do a lot of commercial stage alliances and deals, but we have our own pipeline, including some early oncology assets and some biosimilars that we're bringing forward to the market as well. We benefit from having local businesses in certainly 20 countries in Europe, where our application of local brilliance and commercial excellence allows us to take those products into the market. As Philippe has mentioned, we're a joined up organization. We have both that R&D capability, but also a supply capability and a manufacturing capability. And then finally, that commercial and market access piece that one would expect from a commercial organization. What I propose to do today, having introduced you to Mundipharma, is to talk about the role of alliance management in our organization. We're quite a small group. The structure is very delimited, very delineated. There are just 8 of us as part of the business development and strategic partnerships organization. And the role of the alliance management within that group is to ensure that the value of an alliance that was anticipated at deal signature is achieved by the team that are working on the alliance. Principally, this means to manage the differences that we see between our organization and other organizations, but also to manage those internal communication challenges that we all face within our teams. What I propose to do is to give you 6 very specific examples of the things that we do and draw those up into a bigger picture. So for the first one, please, Dylan, the next slide. As Philippe has said, it's really important that we have a decent structure within which to work. And for Mundipharma, that means that we have a structure that allows us to service each of the different alliances according to their priorities. As I'm sure you will understand, not all alliances can be the key business priorities. Some of them are slightly lower of priority for us as an organization. But in principle, those key alliances that require day-to-day attention, we class as tier 1 or tier 2, and we manage proactively. We also delegate some of our alliances to that tier 3 or tier 4. So the tier 3, those that require reactive management only, and the tier 4 alliances, which are essentially just local distribution deals that are managed through the commercial leads in each country. What this enables us is to be very clear about alliance function and the services that will be provided by the department. So that structure for us as a business and the reach that the alliance management group has within it are critical to that operation of the business. The second thing that I'd like to talk about, Dylan, please, is about communication. Again, as Philippe has said, Communication in an alliance is critically important, and fostering open and transparent communications is one of the primary roles that we can support as alliance managers. To do that, we use a health check. As you can see, an example here of how such a data might be portrayed, looking at cultural, strategic, and operational fit. Or we would use a balanced scorecard, where we look at relational, strategic, operational, and financial agreement and alliance between the two organizations. In any event, these are just tools, but are tools that are designed to prompt a conversation, and it is the value of those conversations that we find useful in terms of best practice. So stimulating that open communication between the two alliance teams. The third one, please, Dylan, is around staff training. At Mundipharma, we seek to be a high-performing learning organization. And for an organization to be at its best, I believe we must continuously learn and reinvent ourselves. To do this, the Alliance Management Group provides specific training for individuals who will be working on our alliances, both as they join the company and in a much longer day session, where we look at trying to understand how folks might contract with each other, both on a personal level. We might address how our mindset impacts the way that we work, both with our partner teams and internal teams. We look at those behaviors that are both constructive and destructive to our alliances and to our relationships, and then how alliance management can help us with the governance and structuring the partnership. And then finally, we look at the cultural piece, trying to understand how trust is important to the relationship. And we find that this is a critical component to our organization as we seek to develop partnering as the primary way that we will do business. The fourth one, please, Dylan, yes, is the Playbook and the Lay Summary. In an ideal world, we would have team members who join an alliance team and stay there for an extended period of time. But as we all know, that is not the case. So onboarding teams and providing information so that team members can get up to speed very quickly is critically important. Our playbook that we use contains a short potted history of the alliance. It just talks about the key people, it talks about the risks that we face in the alliance, and it talks about the obligations that we have both for ourselves and for our partners. By contrast, the Lay Summary is a very specific description of the agreement that we have between us and our partner. It is not written by the lawyers, such that we get an interpretation of the agreement and we don't just get a copy paste of the text. And that way, as an alliance manager, I can help my team understand what it is that we need to be doing in combination with looking at the playbook. Ideally, longevity and continuity would be better, but recognizing that that is not the case, a best practice, I would argue, is to have onboarding and the information available to team members who join. The next one, please, Dylan. We've talked about culture a little bit. I think each of our own individual organizations has a specific culture. As we throw the two partners together into an alliance, we have potentially a clash of cultures. And to be explicit about the culture and the behaviors that we expect of our teams is really important. Philippe talked about aligning with senior management and making sure that they're bought into the alliance and to the way that the business works with alliances. And Mundipharma's senior managers have sat down and said, right, what is the organization that we will seek to be? How will we seek to set a culture for ourselves and for our alliances? And we've used these behavioral guidelines and cultural guidelines in the context of launch meetings with partners as to help them understand how our team should be expecting to function. Finally, the last things that I suggest in terms of best practice are having appropriate tools and processes. So next one, please, Dylan. And I just show a couple of examples here. Reporting is really important for our managers, and we need to have a process whereby we can get that information to our managers in a form that they will find digestible. We use a software-based system to provide those monthly reports, but also the same software system allows us to download all of the financial metrics and obligations that we have for each of our individual alliances into a single Excel spreadsheet that we can use to work with our managers and with our finance teams to make sure that the information that we're looking at and the royalties that we're tracking, the milestones that we're tracking, are being paid or received on time. Alignment, as I say, with management is critically important in this case, and we're finding that with these relatively new processes that we're putting in place as our organization grows and develops and matures and reinvents itself, that these are useful tools to engage with our senior managers. So I've given you 6 very specific examples here. I've talked about tiering and service levels and the way that a business might structure its alliance management. This should be specific for each individual organization, but a group where we have dedicated individuals who are looking to continuously learn and develop is probably the best approach. I've talked about communication and the health checks and the scorecards that we use, and so having processes in place to stimulate conversations with partners is the best practice and is the best thing that we can be doing. We've talked about training and onboarding folks, trying to develop our people so that they can have the right conversations, that they have the tools to solve the problems that they will face on a daily basis without having to escalate information. We've talked about being explicit in terms of culture and the guidelines that we have there. And we've talked about the information that we need to have for folks to be participants from day one in an alliance process. And then finally, we've talked about the tools and processes and that those need to be aligned with our internal structures. And with that, I'll finish up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Our third speaker, Sebastien, is ready to go. And Sebastien's interest in alliance management comes with the territory in his role as our head of customer success pharma on Inova's team. His responsibilities include leading the team that assures good relationships between Inova and its clients. And he's picked up on a couple of common themes in what Rob and Philippe have just presented. Sebastien, over to you.
Thank you, Dylan. It's indeed interesting to have both Philippe's and Rob's perspective on best practices in alliance management. I can clearly see some similarities in their approaches, but as your organizations each have a different focus, one being more market focused and the other one with a stronger focus on R&D, I could also identify some differences, and for me this is what makes them so complementary. So thank you again. Allow me just to add a couple of elements on top of what you both mentioned based on discussions that we've had with other Inova's clients. The first point is that you both mentioned the importance of guidelines and of cultures. And we too see more clients building true internal practices around alliance management. We've seen this emerge as one of the key responsibilities of the global alliance management team, or also a dedicated alliance management leader. And building a community of alliance managers within the company and communicating best practices to stakeholders involved in alliances across different subsidiaries, for example, or local teams, or in R&D, where people might only manage one early stage alliance a year. This has become an important responsibility. The second point that I've noticed that both of you had a strong focus on assessing the strength of the alliance relationship. So by performing health check, for example, but also tracking issues. And both of these help to proactively identify risk before they impact the alliance. And in line with what you both said, we often see alliance manager using an impact and likelihood matrix to identify the potential risk and mitigate them before they become unmanageable. So we've seen very simple implementations of this matrix with only the high, medium, and low, for example, as values for both the impact and the likelihood criteria. Finally, I'd like to develop on something that you both mentioned, especially Rob, is according to an IBM study on biopartnering and validated by our internal survey of a group of 20 clients, the biggest contributor to alliance failures or changed amongst the senior alliance management team in an alliance. So for example, when you, Philippe or Rob, one day you step out of your management role in an alliance due to a merger or an acquisition, a change in an overall organizational strategy, or a promotion, or just the inherent mobile nature of the alliance management job. So there needs to be a plan for what happens next. And our clients at Inova tell us that best long-term alliance management plans include a strong focus establishing a formal corporate and institutional memory. So this obviously not only helps with unearthing details about an alliance that, as Philippe noted, can extend over a decade or more, it also builds a capacity for adding consistency and continuity to future alliances. So again, thank you very much, Rob and Philippe, for these great presentations. We don't hear you, Dylan, I think. You're still muted.
Apologies. So thank you, Sebastien, as well. I'm going to turn over now to some of the questions that have started to come in. If you do have questions, please do add them in the chat window. The first question that I'll ask here is directed to you, Philippe, and it's from Christian. Philippe, you mentioned that a team of people is required for alliance management. Could you provide some insights as to which step each member will participate in? Are they involved from the beginning? What sort of process structure are you following? Philippe?
Thank you. Are we talking about the team in alliance management per se, as opposed to BD&L in general? I assume so.
It looks like alliance management, yes.
Yeah. I mean, there are various ways. I mean, it depends also on the size of the organization, the portfolio that you have partnered. But you know, we tend to have an organization which is basically having alliance managers focused within the franchise. It doesn't necessarily have to be. There are some cultural components which are, you know, more perhaps towards the east of the world, in Japan, Asia. Specialty or way of communication might be just as important as perhaps a therapeutic area for an alliance manager. But it does help to integrate with the business kind of priorities and strategies. So if you're close to the business and the franchise, IHD, you know, neuroscience franchise, cardiovascular metabolic franchise, established medicine franchise, whatever it is, it allows you to be close to the franchise leads, commercial and development, close to the stakeholders, people who will take the business decision, and that's the way we're trending. But we need some flexibility as well. If one day you have a digital deal, suddenly you've got to reinvent yourself and train people also in the digital area, and not necessarily pertaining to any specific franchise, but maybe across divisions, including NIBR, Sandoz for us, and oncology, for example.
Fantastic, thanks. I'm going to put the next question to you, Rob, but I think we'll probably come back to you, to Philippe as well. The question is from Livia, and they are asking, if possible, can you share something about the HR structure of the companies? For example, how many people do you actually have on your alliance management team? Do they execute BD activities as well, or is there an entirely separate team for BD? So let's go to you, Rob.
Sure, thank you. We have so in our business development and strategic partnerships team, there are folks who are focused on delivering corporate BD&L and corporate activities. We have some folks who are designed, or who are there to with a design to implement specific BD deals, be in licensing or out licensing, and that focus varies. And then we have a specific alliance management team. That at the moment is divided by regions. We just restructured it so that we have people out in the Far East who look after our Far East based alliances, whereas based in Europe, we tend to look after the Europe ones, or the global deals that have been signed out of Europe. So it's a small team, but it's divided in that fashion.
Excellent. And Philippe, how does it work at Novartis?
Well, again, I think we have essentially BD&L is based on 3 pillars: the search and evaluation, negotiation, alliance management. We have BD&L finance people supporting the deal making process, so renegotiating a deal. We have the divestment out licensing people. So we have a certain specialty within the BD&L, and that's the way that we are functioning, and we've been functioning for almost 20 years now, roughly.
And is it a big team, Philippe, in terms of the number of people engaged?
The people who are, well, we are spread around the world a little bit, but the global core BD&L people, the global ones, where we refer to the global ones, maybe 35, 40 people. And then people who have 2 hats, they do strategic, perhaps in Singapore or Miami, they will have a strategic role, but also a BD&L role. Alliance management tends to be added on. We don't yet have, except the US and Japan, and China, as of very soon, in a month's time, we'll have 1 alliance manager. But at the moment, that's from the global alliance management perspective, that's the way it's spread out.
Thank you.
If I can add to that, Dylan, we also have the due diligence function is based, or at least it's led from the team that I work with. Although we pull in many other folks from the different functions to be able to assess that properly. And previously, I think I've worked in an organization where folks were distributed by geography, but it's getting away, as Philippe mentioned, that accidental alliance management, to having somebody who is dedicated and who understands and has the skill set to manage the partner, to solve the problems, and to ensure that the value is obtained by both partners, is, I think, where it's critical. And that's the way, the best way to run the alliance management group.
So let me pick up on that idea of a skill set, because we've got a question from Francis, who asks, can a good business developer also be a good alliance manager? Does the skill set overlap? Maybe to you, Rob.
Well,
I think the skill sets are different. I certainly see in a business development environment, folks are very attuned to asking questions, very attuned to trying to understand an interest from a partner, and that will always help us solve the problems that come in a relationship. I think if business development is rewarded on the number of deals done, and then the opportunity to throw those over the fence or the wall of confusion, that's not a great place to be. And so having business development managers who understand what it takes to implement and manage an alliance thereafter is a really good opportunity and things to do. In a small organization, you're going to wear many hats. There is a conversation not just about business development, but about project managers, and should an alliance manager be a project manager, or vice versa. Philippe, I know you wanted to say something.
Well, thank you, Rob. I think the dynamics are very different. Business creation, deal making, as opposed to alliance management, the psychology as well. I think the motivations as well. I think it's a very different job. I think the skills are probably overlapping a great deal, but I think the approach, the mindset is probably different. Achieving a deal, calling a partner's bluff, etc., during negotiation. When you're in the same bed with a partner, the dynamics when you renegotiate a deal or you manage a deal and an alliance is very, very different. You've got to play carefully with calling somebody's bluff or something. I think that when the trust, you can destroy it in 10 seconds, even if it's taken you or your colleague a great deal of investment to building the relationship. You can destroy it very quickly. I think the danger is, of course, you end up in the same bed with different dreams, and that's when the alliance management skills become obvious. And of course, remember you bring, when you're a negotiator or search and evaluation, you bring an opportunity to the organization, to the top management. It's rewarding. There's lots of congratulations, applaud. If you're an alliance manager, other people don't hear too much about you, or when they hear about you, it's usually because you've got an issue that you can't resolve with the team or with your partner, and you've got to bring it up to the higher management with some recommendation, hopefully, but usually you're not necessarily welcomed. So it takes some courage, and you bring up an issue. I think it makes a big difference with a negotiator or business maker, deal maker.
Philippe, let me just follow on from that, because we have a question from Piyush, who asks in the same vein, how important is emotional intelligence for alliance managers?
Well, I think it is. I mean, it's in both roles as well. But alliance management, I think there's a lot of. I remember an expression saying, "Leaving the contract in the drawer." Okay, and then really reading between the lines, understanding the partner, being a good listener, the body language, all the soft skills that usually very much in the big corporate analytical world tend to be, placed under the carpet. They come really alive in alliance management. That's when you can actually practice your soft skills, and I think they are key instruments to actually maneuvering all the challenges of an alliance, because they are like a marriage. There are some challenges in all alliances at some time, in the life of that alliance.
Sebastien, I know you've been a little bit quiet there, but there's a question for you from Lola, which is simply, how do you maintain a corporate memory?
Well, there is about two forms of corporate memory. Is first, well, Philippe mentioned how important it is for the alliance manager to be involved early on in the deal-making process and negotiation. And here for the alliance manager to access the information that is important for them to, as soon as it is signed, quickly schedule the kickoff and the workshop is important. Having access to that information, I would say, is the first form of corporate memory. What has happened until the deal signature. And then once the deal is signed, well, we had a few examples today. I was in the context of HR turnover mainly. When you take the management of an alliances that you know nothing about, you have to that has been running for some years, you want to easily know what parts of who are part of the governance structure. What were the last issues, as Philippe explained, how they were raised, how they were solved, what are the next potential risks, what are the upcoming obligations to not miss, and to make sure you align with your finance team. So the key documents of the GSC minute meetings, for example, the amendments. So there is multiple. I gave you a few examples here coming to my mind, but yeah, the goal is to have the 360 view of your alliance that you're taking ownership and you know nothing about.
I'm going to jump in, and please forgive me to the people asking the questions. I'm going to put a couple of them together because they seem to come on a similar subject. So Rob, and then I'll come to you, Philippe, just after. We've got questions around training alliance managers. Alliance management. So from Francis, he is interested in understanding just how alliance managers are trained. Is it something you do in-house? Is it something you do externally? And Shreya is also interested in whether it's something that people do online. Is it something they can do remotely as well? Rob, how do you train an alliance manager?
So I think maybe if I could start with the first comment is I believe that everybody who is working on an alliance team has a job as an alliance manager. There are those of us that have it as a specific job title, but if you are working with a partner, you are responsible at some level for the health of that alliance. So the training that we've been doing is a lot with our whole teams rather than just the specific folks. We built a training module with an external provider. that was based over 2 days. And for an organization the size of Mundipharma, I think we probably put about, there's 1,000 people in Cambridge, or there were in Cambridge in the UK. We probably put 350, 400 folks through that training process. What it enables us to do is to help them understand, as I went through the slide, the importance of contracting. So that agreement that they have with folks, not the contract in terms of the agreement, the formal document, but if I agree with you that we're going to do something, what does that look like? And how do I, you have contracted with me today that I would hopefully give you some information. I've contracted with you in terms of my preparation, and I will give you information today. So that's important. We look at a couple of specific tools in terms of trying to help people understand. I don't know if you're familiar with the ladder of inference, and where people are often we fight about conclusions. We don't fight about the original data, but we've walked to a conclusion based on our own preconceptions. So we talk to folks about that and help them understand how the disagreement that they might be facing is simply a misunderstanding, and how to resolve that. We talk to them about standards of legitimacy and how they might look to trying to understand what a partner is looking to achieve, what we're looking to achieve, and how those two interests can be married together, and making sure that that nobody feels had from an agreement as we implement that through. We talk about mindset. We talk about valuing and looking to not just solely for ourselves and to take money out of the partnership for ourselves, but how do we do best together? Often, or predominantly, that is why we have entered a partnership, because we have something that the partner doesn't have, the partner has something that we don't have, and together we should be more than sum of the parts. So provided we can look to expand the pie, for want of a better term, and trying to help folks understand that from a mindset perspective is important. And we look at the culture and the behaviors. We look at what does it mean to trust somebody? How does trust work itself out? Philippe said a couple of times that can be eroded very quickly. How do we show some level of competency, some level of integrity? How do we show some interest in the partner? And how do we, not become entirely self-seeking to demonstrate an approach to trust? And then we talk about the processes that we have as an organization that are involved. And much of this you can pull together online yourself, or you can go, as we did, externally, and we've now internalized that, and it's something that I will deliver to the teams internally.
Philippe, what about at Novartis? How do you train alliance managers there?
I think there are lots of similarities that Rob mentioned in terms of training modules, internal. We set up 1, 2, 3 kind of big internal, also kind of not congress but workshop that we have in East Hanover, in Basel, in Horskyn. I think it's so we do a lot of our own training. We've got sometimes, as Rob has, external provider of service of training. I think a key component is, first of all, before even you train anybody, is probably just to add on something that Rob mentioned, is to recruit the right people into the organization, into the function. I think it's very difficult if you don't have the right mindset, the right background in your education, in your life. It's very difficult to inculcate, value and behaviors, and sharing. If you have people with red character, always results focused, it's very difficult to bring them into the blue culture. We always try to do that. It's a challenge, and we often have a joke among ourselves that 80% of the negotiation, the training, and the educating people is more internal than with the partner itself. So, and it reflects the reality. It's always, you always bring into the organization, when an issue comes up, the value of the partnership, as opposed to the dollar value of the relationship, or the issue at stake. And that takes a lot of negotiation in itself. So you need negotiation skills when you're an alliance manager. I've also trained myself and exposed people to different types of training like good listening, coaching skills, etc., that complements perhaps the purely professional alliance management training. And that adds value because we are, again, very much focusing on the soft skills because alliance management, you can have an issue on mutagenicity study or scale up production or clinical development or commercial or whatever. You can't be an expert in all of this. You've got to rely on the expertise of your colleagues or the team. But the soft skills, that's your responsibility. You've got to bring people together and align them together. So that's a challenge.
I've got a question here from Anthony, and it's to both Rob and Philippe, but I think I'll start with you, Philippe, because you mentioned in your presentation the importance of being a partner of choice. And the question from Anthony is, do your organizations regularly obtain market feedback so you can compare how you stack up against other pharma companies in order to be that partner of choice? Do you get that market feedback?
We do actually, and not necessarily systematically, but every so often. And we recently, because we're trying to implement the best partner philosophy internally, we've conducted surveys as well and contacted people. We've commended, we ask actually an external provider to do a survey for us. We've got Boston Consulting Group sometimes coming up with the statistics, etc. We do that. I think the best way, because it's very difficult to actually get a granular and a meaningful kind of feedback. I felt it's a bit of my personal feedback but I feel the best way is to talk to your partner, your counterpart, one-to-one, to get regular discussions. And if you are negotiating or renegotiating or resolving an issue or facing a challenge or milestones, you have to alignment. Perhaps afterwards you align with your partner and get his internal, all the stakeholders on his side, perhaps, and with your alliance manager counterpart to get feedback on the way it went, the way they perceived us during that specific kind of discussion around that specific issue. I think that's the best fresh of the press kind of feedback you can get from a partner, and probably very highly representative of the way the partners see you, as opposed to a broad kind of survey, looking at the whole industry or all your partners or in the way they see you. Okay, I think that's where I get the value and some real feedback I can work on and reflect and maybe report internally.
Rob, that aligns with your experience as well?
Yeah, very much. I mean, we have sought some external feedback or an external provider to obtain some feedback. As Philippe says, that one-to-one conversation after solving an issue or negotiating a challenge is important. One thing, of course, that we're doing here is that we're only looking potentially at our current partners. And partner of choice, you might want to know the feedback from the companies where you didn't do a deal. What was it that you didn't do? What was it that you did that didn't sit well with the partner? And that's always much more difficult to achieve. Those, again, to quote Philippe, those that we're in bed with, will certainly give us information, but it's from those that are looking that we've missed that it's useful to hear from as well.
I agree.
So Sebastien, I've got a question here from Luke, which I'm going to kick to you, and it'll be with apologies to you, Philippe. The question is, do you think that the best practices that Rob and Philippe mentioned will apply for small companies, pharma companies too, because not everyone is Novartis?
Yeah, and we've seen already two examples today with Novartis and Mundi with different sizes. But yes, and it's also linked to other question about the organization. When we run a survey about on our 20 clients, with our 20 clients, we went from organization from one dedicated alliance manager to Novartis, which is much more, about 40 today. And we've seen that, yes, it is applicable. And throughout the years, we've deployed our solution for these different type of organizations. Obviously, there will be some differences. For smaller organization, the need in building this alliance community that we were talking that we extensively talked about today is less important than for bigger organizations with people in the regions, for example. So it's just where you put the bar that will differ. But overall, what we've seen is, yes, it is applicable for small organizations.
Okay. I have a question from Ken around the processes. He says the processes and practices seem very sound, but do either of you leverage ISO 44001? Rob, do you leverage that at all in terms of the work you're doing there at Mundipharma?
Not that I'm aware of.
Same here. Same here.
No, as well. We have a question from Francis again, who asks, what are the main causes of an alliance management failure?
So I can take that. I think it's I said at the beginning, the two biggest challenges for alliance management are managing difference and managing internal communications. And so as the one point, you could make an argument that at one point, the only point where two organizations are aligned is when they sign the deal. Strategically, things change. And so managing that difference in strategy, managing that difference in the way that we choose to operationalize an agreement, managing the culture, both of our individual organization and the partner organization, and then the alliance as well. That's where the big challenges come. And then it's managing communications internally. We all know people who will pick and choose the answers that they choose to hear, or they will go to certain individuals because they know they'll get an answer, or they'll keep going to an individual until they get the answer they want to hear. So being aligned internally is critically important, and that can lead to challenges. I think the best example, Mundipharma sits, I would argue, relatively in the middle as a pharma company, and we work with both the small biotech and with large pharma. And the large pharma sometimes says to us, it says, you don't know where the line exists. You're so, fly by night. And from an organization that is highly process and highly SOP driven, you can understand why their perception of us as an organization is like that. By contrast, the small biotech sits and it looks at us and it says, you are overly bureaucratic. Why do we have to do this? Can't we just do X? And that alignment of culture there is a difficult walk to make.
Just I can add two words. It's not listening would probably be the greatest failure. In 2 words, not listening.
To jump in then on another word, we've got a question from Fredericks, and essentially saying one of the words that he was expecting to hear a lot, but that he didn't hear was governance, and he finds this a little bit strange. Is governance something that you excluded on purpose from your best practices, or is it something that is just assumed to be there from the start? Philippe, where does governance lie?
I mean, it stands. I mean, I did mention it a couple of times. I think in my presentation, but we all know governance exists. We know we have joint steering committee, joint development meeting, joint management committee, subcommittees, of IP, development. We know all these exist. So I think today we didn't necessarily want to mention any structural kind of way of organizing things, which can be very different from one organization, commercial or development. And it's fair point raised by the audience, but we certainly don't undervalue it, but we try to bring the tools and the way to behave in those governance meetings. But we do have governance, but it's also very difficult to standardize because there's so many, every single alliance is so different in terms of cycle and in terms of objectives, etc., that it's very much challenging to provide a structure. In a way, the charter I propose and the tools that Rob mentioned help those governance being running smoothly. But it's a fair point. We didn't go into that specifically.
Yeah, I agree, Philippe. the structure of the deals can be so different, to try to standardize that process is very hard. And that's really why I didn't address it per se.
Okay. I'm going to ask just a final question, and I'm sorry that there are probably about 8 or 9 questions there that I haven't had a chance to get to, and I apologize, but we've had some great discussion, and I appreciate everybody asking those questions. But let me choose this one because I think it's an interesting point to finish on. The question is, we've outsourced some of the scouting, we've outsourced a lot of the administration elements of different pharma activities. Do you think alliance management is something that will be outsourced from pharma companies in the future? Rob, maybe we can start with you.
I think, unfortunately, we can never predict the future. It's who'd have thought we'd have been sat here now. Alliance management is all about relationships. It's about relationships internally, and it's about the relationship with the partner. As an outsourced provider, you're introducing additional complexity, and we know how complexity increases the more channels or the more people there are in a team, in terms of the points that those communications can happen. So I can understand where alliance management could be outsourced, and certainly if we look at if we merge the terms between alliance manager and customer relationship manager, you might see customer relationship management being outsourced. But I would hope from a pharma perspective, where we are quite closely linked and the success of both businesses is very much tied to the success of the alliance, that alliance management has a critical role to play, and it would be difficult for that to be moved offshore, as it were.
I tend to
Philippe?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I always see alliance management between kind of project management and the legal department. You know, we are in between. We're almost we don't understand the granularity of the project. But when we ask our legal colleagues 10 years after the deal had been signed, they usually, you know, there've been 3 different legal, or if not 10, in between, and they just look at the word and the letter of the contract, but they don't understand the previous relationship, the dynamics, and so the context is very important that goes around, and you know, the history, corporate history, and what Sebastien mentioned early on. We have to know all these things, and of course, I think the external provider will not understand all the intricacies of your own internal dynamics and politics. That's only you will be able to, you know, bring to the table and perhaps use to resolve the issue. So I think we might work from home as opposed to going to the office. That's manageable. You know, outsourcing that function, I think that will be a challenge. But of course, you know, that's maybe I'm biased, so I will allow people to have a different opinion.
It's interesting. In the survey I mentioned earlier on, we've heard that more than 80% of the time of an alliance manager is internal time, and only 20% outside. So while keeping that in mind, yes, if you outsource, you make it more complex. And yeah.
That's true.
I'm going to finish up there, gentlemen, because we're right up on time. Just at this point, I want to take the opportunity to thank the 3 of you for this afternoon. Philippe from Novartis, Rob from Mundipharma, and of course Sebastien from Inova. A couple of notes for everyone who is on the call. Please keep your eye on your email inbox. You'll receive a link to review the video of the webinar tomorrow. And of course, you can feel free to share that link around with your colleagues who might be interested but were unable to join us on the call. When you click off, please don't forget to complete the short survey that pops up when you exit the call. The feedback is very, very valuable for us. And of course, if you'd like to participate as a panelist on a future webinar, you can let us know that in the survey as well. And with that, we're done. So thank you all. Please stay safe and well. And thanks again for joining our webinar here at Inova this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.